This opinion piece was brought to you by the South China Morning Post and read out by naturalreaders.com. Slight revisions to the actual text were made for your listening pleasure. No copyright infringement intended. Crazy Rich Asians No More. Written by Shanghai-based independent economist Andy Siat. First published on the 3rd of September 2021 at 1:30 a.m. Beijing time. Common prosperity. Common prosperity. Common prosperity. The Chinese leadership is talking about common prosperity as a policy driver. This could be a cue for those with great wealth to recycle it back into society or to pay it forward, the so-called third round of wealth redistribution. Together with other recent changes to how the Chinese economy is run, we are beginning to see the China model taking shape. Chinese leaders call the country's economic model a socialist market economy with Chinese characteristics. That's right, socialist market economy with Chinese characteristics. It might sound like a mouthful, but three of those words, Chinese, socialist and market, are taking on proper substance now. China makes up 17% of the global economy, a figure that could double in 2 decades. Just by virtue of its weight, the China model has far-reaching consequences for the world. It is fair to say the world is entering the Chinese century, with all its benefits and limitations. To be sure, Chinese prosperity is first and foremost an East Asian phenomenon. Japan, South Korea, and now China demonstrate that East Asians are capable of reaching Western levels of productivity. The economic model employed to achieve this is of secondary importance. China's current income per capita is just a small fraction of the West, equivalent to around 25% to 33% of leading Western nations. The difference is the tailwind. The Chinese government can make many mistakes without derailing the growth trend. China's economic model does have far-reaching political consequences. Let's dive into the first part, the fact that it is Chinese. Chinese civilization is all about uniting people around the political leadership. Starting from the first emperor of China burning entire libraries of books, it has always been about harmonizing all the people in a vast continent into one and the same. The way to do this is through thought control, either by burning books, or by enticing the best and the brightest to memorize the right things for exams in pursuit of a lucrative career as mandarins in the imperial bureaucracy. In the modern context, this means capital cannot play a significant role in education or the media. The recent clampdown on big tech companies in the name of preventing monopolies is all part of that. Simply put, the government will control all content creation. The second part is the central role of political authority in all aspects of economic life. Big private businesses are a new element in Chinese society that could become alternative power centers, derailing the traditional Chinese hierarchy. Inserting Communist Party cells into businesses is done to ensure the party and government still control anything big. It is likely that, after the founders of the private enterprises leave, big private companies will be subject to government influence in selecting senior management, similar to state-owned enterprises. The market part comes naturally to Chinese culture, and resource optimization has always been part of Chinese civilization. When people have opportunities, they will make the most of them. Looking back in history, China's trade with the West lasted until world wars broke out and the wartime turmoil made production too costly. China's trade surplus with the West now is really a restoration of the norm. Hence, the market naturally brings prosperity to China. The inequality that some associate with market competition is not so serious in China because most Chinese are quite competitive. For example, the divide between white-collar and blue-collar workers in much of the world is not as bad in China. So many parents push their children to become white-collar workers that China has an oversupply of them and a shortage of blue-collar workers. Hence, wages for construction workers and domestic helpers are much higher than those for graduates of elite colleges. Because Chinese are so competitive, great wealth creation is often tied to government power that distorts the market, not market forces by itself. China's huge wealth inequality, for example, is largely policy-driven. The government's monetary and fiscal policy and political processes behind access to credit have powered the distribution of property. Those with access to credit could store up land early to accumulate great wealth. China's hukou system or household registration system gave old urban residents the privilege to reap benefits from resettlement for urban development. These two factors account for much of the wealth inequality today. The socialist bit of the Chinese model is in focus because of the policy momentum for the third round of wealth redistribution. The widespread public suspicion that China's robber barons amassed great wealth through Mandarin merchant collusion or Mandarin merchant cronyism, an age-old Chinese business model, makes the third round of wealth redistribution even more popular. In imperial times, China was quite egalitarian. Otherwise it could not have fed hundreds of millions on so little land. Great wealth was mostly acquired by the Mandarin class through corruption. And every once in a while, a new emperor comes along and cuts off the heads of some mandarins who got filthy rich under his father's reign. That was an efficient way of recycling wealth, but we are not so brutal anymore. Now, wealthy people have the option to donate to approved charitable foundations. The next question then becomes, is this fair? Is China's wealth redistribution fair? China's wealth accumulation over the past 4 decades has been built on cheap labor. China has invented no commonly used products, in sharp contrast to Japan. Big wealth has often been acquired with the help of powerful mandarins, or just luck. Hence, taking that wealth away has few consequences in terms of efficiency. Donations, the modern equivalent of cutting off heads at the wet market at the crack of dawn in imperial times, seem like a reasonable compromise. As early as now, let it be known that the newfound China model appears to have these key elements. State capital occupies strategic heights. Private capital takes the competitive bits. Successful big private companies become subject to tight state control. The small enterprises that employ most people are left alone. Great wealth is recycled back into society. And, nobody touches the business of thought control but the government. For better or worse, this is the future. This opinion piece was brought to you by the South China Morning Post. No copyright infringement intended.